Hey everyone, welcome back. So this video was actually inspired by another video I watched recently by the New York Times Opinion. That video is called, "We've Lost 2 Years to COVID, It's Time to Grieve." In that video, they talk about this term that I had never heard before called ambiguous loss. So ambiguous loss is defined as this loss that you can't quite pinpoint, you can't quite specify what you've lost, but you're strongly sure you've lost something. And this is the perfect term to capture how we've all felt these last couple years during the pandemic. We can't quite prove or specify it, but we all feel like if COVID hadn't happened, if we had gotten these last 2 years back, we would be completely different people. Maybe you'd be on a completely different career path, but you don't exactly know what that would be. Maybe you would have had children that you didn't have, but you can't quite prove that. Maybe you would have met a close group of friends that you didn't. So this ambiguous loss is so personal and so relevant to us in this current time that I thought it would be interesting to make a video on this and how it made me think of this concept in stats called counterfactuals. Now, we haven't talked about counterfactuals on this channel yet, but I think they're super interesting, not just from a stats point of view, in fact, barely from a stats point of view, but more just from a human perspective kind of view. Counterfactuals are anytime you ask a what-if question about the world. It can be something really trivial, like if I had eggs today in the morning instead of cereal, would I have made it to the gym later today? To bigger life-defining questions that are much more personal, like if I had grown up in Spain instead of the United States, how many close friends would I have today? They're basically any kind of question where we are asking something counter to the fact. That's where this word counterfactual comes from, where there is some fact about the world that did happen, and we're curious about if that went a different way, what would some outcome have been like later on? Now, the commonality to all counterfactuals, besides just that definition, is that we can never know with 100% certainty what would have happened. By definition, that time has passed. The time where that decision was made is gone, it will never come back, and therefore we can never say with 100% certainty what the outcome would have been. We can only make our best guess. Now, some counterfactuals are actually pretty easy to estimate, and we have strong confidence in the estimations we make. For example, let's take the stock market. Let's just say that you bought $100 worth of stock in the beginning of the week, and in the middle of the week you sold it for $120, so your profit was $20. And by the end of the week, the stock price was $150. So if the counterfactual question is, if I had sold it at the end of the week, what would my profit have been? Almost certainly the answer is $50. But we have to be careful here. While it seems like a trivial question, there are assumptions I've made that I didn't explicitly state. And the biggest assumption there is that the act of you selling the stock in the middle of the week did not affect the stock price. So you're not such a big player in the stock market that your actions are directly affecting the stock price. And so if we had rephrased our counterfactual to something more global, like what if everyone had sold their stocks later in the week, then that's much more difficult to estimate because everybody selling their stocks is going to affect the market for sure, versus just you making a different decision. Now, other counterfactuals, like the COVID pandemic, are much more difficult to estimate. I personally wouldn't even know where to get started. If I had to answer a question like, if COVID hadn't happened, where would I be living? Who would my close friends be that I see every day? What kind of person would I be? Would I even be making this video on counterfactuals right now? Now, if you'll allow me to go on a related tangent for a minute, suspend your disbelief and pretend that parallel universes exist. Maybe you already do, maybe you don't. Either way, just pretend they exist for a second. COVID sure feels like some kind of branched timeline or branched universe, doesn't it? To specify what I'm saying, there was some time, likely in 2019, where if some set of events had gone a different way, COVID never would have happened. And we can consider that the main timeline. So that just kind of goes like this. Now, we know those events did happen in this universe, in this timeline, which created a branch at that point in time. Now, the main universe where COVID didn't happen contains this person, this version of you, unaffected by the pandemic. This branch timeline, in which I'm currently talking to you, in which we all exist, contains the version of you that was affected by the pandemic. Now, both versions of you can ask the counterfactual question of what kind of person would I be if the pandemic had not happened? But neither person can know the outcome because we can't see. Each universe cannot get insight into the other. Now, okay, thinking about parallel universes and stuff might seem kind of silly or crazy, but the main point I want to get across is that counterfactuals are not just some kind of entity that exists in mathematics and we have to think about it in a mathematical kind of way. There are definitely many mathematical approaches to dealing with estimating counterfactuals, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is that We as human beings think about counterfactuals inherently. How many times have you made a decision in the past, and then later on have thought about, if I had done something differently in that moment, what kind of person, what kind of outcome would be today? For example, let's say that you considered getting a gym membership last month, you ended up not getting it for whatever reason, but today you're thinking about, if I had gotten that gym membership and consistently been working out 30 minutes a day for the last month, how happy would I be today? And that's an unanswerable question, because at the end of the day, you didn't get that gym membership. But it's still a question that we find ourselves asking, and which is important to us as humans to ask in order to figure out what to do next. Now, of course, if you want to be all boring about it and stuff, of course, counterfactuals have applications to business and industry. Like, if I had priced my product at $20 instead of $10, how many units would I have sold? And so there's all those applications of counterfactuals that are relevant to your job if you're a data scientist or a data analyst or business person. But the main points I wanted to get across in this video is that counterfactuals exist. They are a very active, very live field of math and stats, but also they're just a way we as human beings think about our world and deal with life. So they're at this intersection of very, very human things, but also things that have been researched very extensively. If you like this video for either of those reasons, please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for sticking around until the end, and I'll see you next time.